Hello and welcome to our learning environment expectations. Today we had an amazing conversation in our middle school homeroom all about what we can expect from one another when it comes to cultivating a virtual learning community. In the next few slides, you guys are going to see what our students have come up with as far as expectations that they only spent today talking about, but that we will continue to cultivate throughout the entire year. They had voice and choice in their hands in all of this because they want to not only hold themselves accountable to these expectations, but each other as well. This is a great conversation starter for you and your family to have with one another about these expectations, how to uphold these expectations, and then also what are ways that we can hold each other accountable if these expectations are not upheld. So hang on tight and get ready for our learning environment expectations, brought to you by iAcademy Middle School. One of the reasons that we love homeroom so much is because it really does inspire a community of learners coming together, talking with one another, collaborating, and then also problem solving. Because we all know that when people come together, there's bound to be things that pop up that are going to need to be worked through. And so after living and breathing Zoom, live lessons, coursework, communication, emails, all of the things that are a part of iAcademy Middle School, today we pressed the pause button and we talked about what was going good, what could use some improvement, and how we can cultivate a culture of accountability. The 5 things that our students came up with today are all about our learning environment and what they want a part of the learning environment in order to hold each other accountable with behavior and social interactions. The first thing that we decided on today was that we were going to actively participate in our learning. And this means being on time for live lessons, asking appropriate questions, collaborating, and engaging with one another. That means not just being present, but being actively present in the learning that we're doing together. Number 2 focused a lot on our chats in Zoom. We decided that using the chats for questions, connecting with teachers, and connecting with friends is what we want to use our chat for. Not spamming with GIFs or images that don't go with what we're talking about, but really being intentional about how we're using chat. Number 3, when we communicate, we need to remember that there is a person behind every screen. So we said we will be kind, we will be respectful, we will be appropriate, and we'll also be descriptive, knowing that sometimes the written word's intentions and perceptions are not always the same. Sometimes the intention is one way and the perception of a written word is another way. Number 4, and this is something all of us can work on, is we are going to pause and think about who we want to communicate with and what we want to communicate before we just shoot off a message to someone or to a whole group. We want to ensure that we are sending a message to the people or to the person that you directly want to communicate with. Who does this message apply to? And what is this message supposed to say? How do I want this message to come across to this person or this group of people? And then last but definitely not least, treat people how you want to be treated. And this applies to people in person and virtually. You guys can see here that kindness is our guiding tool. And why do we do all of this? Because we at iAcademy want you guys to go into the world and do well, but more importantly, to go into the world and do good. And we believe that these 5 learning environment expectations will help us do just that. So in order to maintain accountability when it comes to the expectations that we just talked about, we've come up with 3 kind of levels or attempts to do just that. So let's say that those 5 pieces of expectations in our learning environment, out of 5 of them, 1 of them is not upheld. If it is the first time that an expectation is not upheld, then we are going to hold each other accountable. And us teachers are a part of this equation. Parents and students are all a part of this equation. And if an expectation is not upheld, we will hold each other accountable by having a one-on-one conversation with the teacher and a student. Because the students were a part of creating these expectations, bringing it back to, remember what we decided together? Is that what we were doing? What are we going to do different next time? That's going to be the fuel for our conversation with one another. And hopefully there's a great teachable moment and learning moment that happens from that. If, however, that does not happen, and we get to kind of step number 2, if an expectation is not held up for a second time, we're going to hold each other accountable by having a conversation not just with the parent or with the student and the teacher, but also the parent or guardian as well. And then together we will decide when to perhaps take a break from the virtual office in order to do some intentional learning about what those expectations for our learning environment entail and which ones we can specifically grow in. And if an expectation is not held up for a third time, we will continue the learning process and continue the conversation process with parents, guardians, teachers, and students. We will continue to talk about what is an appropriate amount of time from the virtual office that can have some teachable moments where there's a break involved. And then an additional behavior plan will also be put into place in order to rebuild trust and revisit those accountability expectations. The end in mind for all of this is to have a fun, a safe, and an engaging virtual learning community where we are practicing respectful interactions with one another, really learning how to build those relationships regardless of location, and really learning how to not only advocate for ourselves, but advocate for one another by holding each other accountable and making sure that the expectations that we have for ourselves help us to grow as humans and individuals who need to learn how to interact well with one another. We hope that this inspires amazing conversations with your family, with your students, and with us, because we are all in this thing together, and we are so thankful for that. Please let us know if you have any questions, and we'll talk soon.